Hello class, it's me again, Mom Sheila. For our lesson 2, you will be identifying the materials that float and sink. Before we start, let us go back the activity that we did in our previous lesson. Can you still recall it? What do you remember about the lesson? Very good! Last time, we talked about the material that absorb the water. Can you tell me which material absorb water and which does not? You got it right! The sponge was absorbs water. It is an example of porous material. They have small holes that allows air or liquid to pass through. And the plastic bag is an example of non-porous material, which they do not allow air or liquid to pass through. Have you ever tossed some stick into a pond? Or maybe you like to bring some stuffed toy into a tub? Either way, you probably found that not all objects act the same. When they are in the water, some things sink right into the bottom and some things float into the top. Why is that happen? What are some other things that float and sink into the water? This calls for an experiment. The materials that we need are container with water, a plastic bottle, a coin, a lift, a metal spoon, stick, battery, iron nail, and plastic fork. All we need to do is to put all materials one at a time in the water. Let us observe all the materials if they float and sink. And we can also observe the characteristics of the material before we place them into the water. A plastic bottle into the water. A battery into the water. A leaf into the water. A metal spoon into the water. A coin into the water. A plastic fork into the water. A iron nail into the water. A stick into the water. What did you observe when we placed the materials one at a time in the water? Some things float on top and some things sink. Based on the activity, which of the following materials sank? The metal spoon, the coin, the battery, and the nail sank in the water. Which of the materials floated? The plastic bottle, the stick, the lift, and the plastic fork floated on the water. Look at the group of objects that floated. Compare them. Is there anything common among each one? The materials that floated are made up of plastic and wood. They are light in weight and that's why they float. Look at the group of objects that sank. What can you say about them? The materials that sank are mostly heavy and hard. They are made up of metals and stone. Some of the materials that float are materials made of wood such as chairs, tables, and etc. Materials that are made of plastic also float. Materials is made of metals usually sink. Let me remind you this. Sink means to fall to the bottom of water. Float means to stay on top. Some things float on top of water, some things stay submerged partway down, and some things sink. Some things sink very fast and some things sink very slowly. An object's shape can affect its ability to float, but some materials float no matter what their shape, such as styrofoam and balsa wood. Some things float at first, but then sink as they absorb water or take water on through hose. Why do some people use floaters or salvavidas in swimming pool? To keep them afloat in water. Why large boats or ships float on water? Large ships and boats float on water because the upward push of the water is greater than their weights. Why life vest keeps you afloat on the sea? Life vests keep us afloat in water because it makes us occupy a bigger space, increasing the upward force of the water on ease and making us float. Now, for your assignment, go to your kitchen. Get 5 materials and test whether they float or sink.